All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are going to be talking about PACIO Project's participation in the HL7 May Connectathon this year. Just a brief introduction about the Connectathon. This is an opportunity for multiple vendors to test the client and or server in a structured environment and provide constructive feedback. HL7 hosted a Connectathon this year, May 13th till Friday, May 15th. It was HL7's first virtual Connectathon, although not the first Connectathon that we had participated in. There was great attendance. Over 600 people attended and participated in the Connectathon. Which is a significant increase from previous years. PACIO Project hosted the PACIO-eLTSS Post-Acute Care Transition Summary Track. We also participated in the Care Coordination Track this year, and the Clinical Reasoning Track used PACIO sample data in their ECQM testing. All right, now I'm going to dive into our post-acute care transition summary track. The purpose of our track was to, one, test the integration of CMS assessment data elements from the data element library into health IT systems using FHIR APIs, and two, exchange patient-level cognitive and functional status data between two disparate health IT systems incorporated with electronic long-term services and support, care plan, and patient goals data in a consumable format for clinicians, patients, and family members. We had several Connectathon participants, Altarum, MITRE, and Patient-Centric Solutions. We had several track leads, Dave Hill, Saima, myself, Sean, and Ty. This is our use case diagram. We developed this use case with about 25 to 30 different participants representing multiple organizations. This use case includes PACIO data elements, which focuses on post-acute care, and also eLTSS data elements, which focus on home and community-based services. So what this diagram is showing is an overview of our use case. The top half of the diagram shows the different systems and the flow of information, and the bottom half shows the scenes for our use case. So if we start in the bottom left-hand corner, we start off in scene 1 at home, where the patient is receiving home and community-based services. We have a social worker assessing and documenting eLTSS data in the case management system, and that data is then pushed to the data hub. We then move to scene 2, where the patient is now in a hospital because they experienced a fall at home. So they're admitted to the hospital for surgery. After the surgical intervention, the patient is assessed by multiple disciplines and recommended to continue PTOT and SLP therapy in a SNF. During their time in the hospital, cognitive and functional assessments are completed and documented in the hospital EHR, which are then pushed to the data hub. We then move to scene 3. Patient is admitted to the SNF to continue rehab therapy for 2 weeks. The SNF is able to retrieve and review PACIO and eLTSS data from the data hub to inform her care. Functional and cognitive status is also assessed on admission and discharge, and that information is pushed to the data hub. In scene 4, this is about the pseudo-DEL. So we have an assessment application that pulls the standardized assessment data from the CMS DEL to present forms to the clinician performing the assessments. The assessment application stores the functional and cognitive assessment answers in the data hub. In scene 5, the patient is discharged home. and continues to receive home and community-based services and also home health services. So in this scene, we have the home health agency coordinator reviewing the PACIO-eLTSS data as part of the triage process. In this scene, the data is pulled from the data hub. Again, functional and cognitive status are assessed on admission and discharge and then pushed to the data hub. And in scene 6, we have patient and family access. Although patient and family access can happen at any point during these scenes, we have it specifically designated for scene 6. But in this scene, the patient shares her medical record with her adult son and daughter, and the patient can refer to her care plan to inform her own daily activities. This is a diagram. It's a system architecture diagram. You can see it has all of the different systems involved and how the scenes overlap. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see we have a care coordinator system, which is our case management system. Underneath that, we have our hospital. We have our CMS pseudo-DEL in the bottom. On the right-hand side, we have our home health agency and our SNF. In the middle, we have the health data manager, and above that, we have the patient mobile web client. And you can see on the diagram how the different scenes fit onto this. Now, I'm going to hand it off to Nancy, who's going to kick off the demo scene by scene.
Hello, everyone. So our first scene starts in our patient's home. In step 1, Forrest will demonstrate that the patient was assessed in their home by a care coordinator through home and community-based services, pushing data from the HCBS EMR to the data hub. Following that, Ed will demonstrate pushing the data to the hub.
Thank you, Nancy. This is Forrest, and I'm displaying on my screen the eLTSS FHIR server that holds the patient's care plan. Our patient's name, as you can see, if you look at the left side of this screen, you see the different resources that are populated for Betsy Smith Johnson's eLTSS care plan. What I'm going to display again is the server. It's the eLTSS FHIR server. And I can show you some of the data, but instead of showing it to you in JSON format, I will show you through a viewer what the data would look like to display that we're about to share or push to the data hub. So again, it's Betsy Smith Johnson is our patient. Again, she has a care plan. Some of the data for the care plan is displayed here. So what I'm about to do is pass it over to Ed Castagna, who can display the process for moving that data from the eLTSS server over to the data hub.
Thank you, Forrest. So there's actually, within any of the FHIR servers, there's an entry point which allows you to post a transaction to the server. So for instance, Betty Johnson's care plan has a bunch of FHIR resources found in it, starting off with the care plan. Practitioners, patients, all these resources are found within the FHIR specification. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this transaction and we're going to post it to the FHIR server using a curl, which is just a way of referencing a specific portion of the server by its URL. So we're going to be posting it to HTTPS Data Manager, which this is just the FHIR base of the data hub that we're going to be using. And we're going to be sending over that care plan, and we're going to be getting an output file which just has the results of that. And if I run it, it should go on for a little bit. Now this is all network speed. So I'm uploading that over to the data hub, and pretty soon we should be getting a response back from the data hub, whether it was successful or not. And yeah, so it took a little bit of network time, and then eventually it came back and it said, oh yeah, all that stuff that you sent over has made its way over to the data manager, data hub. I'll pass it back.
And now we move to scene 2 in the hospital, where Betsy experiences a fall at home and is now admitted to the hospital for a surgical intervention.
So we're in the hospital, and you know, the first thing that they would do at the hospital is review the current data on Betsy Johnson. Obviously, we have her demographics. We see that she's on a fair number of medications. Looking at her conditions, we can see that this patient has multiple chronic issues, and we're reviewing some of those. And additionally, we're going to review the ELTSS care plan that was just written. So here it is. If we had looked at this earlier, you would have seen that this did not exist, so it was recently pushed to the hub. We were able to retrieve it and present it to the care provider at the hospital. They'd be reviewing that plan, and I'll be talking about this in a little bit more detail later, but it gives you a little bit of a sense of the various components that were written to the hospital. So after surgical intervention, Betsy is assessed by physical, occupational, and speech-language pathology therapists and is recommended to continue her therapy in a skilled nursing facility. Cognitive and functional assessments are completed and documented in the hospital EHR. And I think May will be sharing a little bit more of detail on that.
So at this point, Betsy Smith-Johnson is in a hospital, and what you're seeing here on the left-hand side is a PAC assessment client. On the right-hand side, there is the electronic health record FHIR server. What's going to happen here is that we're going to be looking up Betsy Smith-Johnson and then associate her with a PAC assessment form. You'll see that this particular client is able to reach out to retrieve the whole list of available PAC assessment clients, both active and potentially retired. But let's go ahead and look up Betsy Smith-Johnson's ID, and you can see that this goes out to the EHR with some messages that you see down here in the lower right-hand corner, and you can see that this is her ID, so that we can attach her to one of the following assessments. In this case, we're actually going to use a long-term care hospital continuity assessment record and evaluation data set, in particular the admission form. Because these admission forms are rather long to complete, in the interest of time, I've actually fast forwarded to the end of the assessment, where you can see that there is an option to go ahead and preview what the results are. And these were previously filled out, and all the way at the bottom you can see that if we are happy with it, we're going to submit it and choose the option to export it to the EHR. And to show that this is dynamic, within the EHR FHIR server itself, I'm going to search to show you that there really is no entries for the questionnaire response at this time. So I'm going to click on export to the EHR. And there should be like an acknowledgement to send it to the EHR. And as a result, looking now, you now see that what was filled out for the questionnaire response is now available inside the EHR. And that's the end of this demo, and we'll hand it off to the perspective of the EHR.
Yeah, so hi, my name's Dave Hill, and I'm going to show you what happens at the EHR level. So May has pushed a bunch of data to the EHR system, and that's in a structured data capture form using the structured data capture IG, or implementation guide in FHIR, to capture form information. And so that information is here. And what I'm going to show you is that our EHR system here will take this structured data capture data, convert it to PACIO resources, and then push that to the data hub. So what you see here is the data in structured data format. And if I send this information to the through the EHR system, this will do the conversion and convert that to PACIO resources. At this point, the assessment that was collected by May's PAC assessment app is now should be in the data hub. And so that information should be available for the rest of the demonstration. And with that, I will hand it back to Nancy.
Okay, so now in scene 3, we're going to be moving to the skilled nursing facility, and both Ed and Forrest will demonstrate steps 1 and 2 at the skilled nursing facility.
All right, so we've broken down the processing into 3 parts. What we have to do is we have to get all the transaction data from a FHIR server, and then we need to parse it into individual resources, and then push it over into the FHIR server where it's going to be going. So we're going to be pushing it over into our SNF FHIR server, but we'll show you the different steps that are going on. One is to be getting the transactions from the data manager, and then we'll parse it and push it over to the this SNF, the skilled nursing facility. So as it's getting the transactions over from our data manager, it basically goes through all the resources that have non-null values for the patient and pulls out the appropriate data as requested. Eventually, we'll parse it out into individual transactions that will reflect the data associated with a specific patient. So I've gotten all the care plan records, all the contract records, device usage statements from the data manager. And when you take a look at it, we're going to be able to parse them into individual resources. So for instance, I don't know if that's, for instance, it'll kind of look like a resource definition, which will eventually get pushed in. And then we just loop through pushing all of the appropriate transactions over to the SNF server. And then I'll give it back to Forrest, who will show you what it looks like when it gets to the SNF server.
Okay, so what you're seeing now is the SNF server. It's the PACIO-eLTSS SNF server. We're using FHIR in this particular case. As you can see on the left-hand side, you see the observations, practitioners, organization, location, of course, patient is in here as well. So this is the data once it gets to the eLTSS server. Again, I'll show you in a FHIR viewer what that would look like briefly for the different items that were collected. So of course, this is Betsy Smith-Johnson, the patient, her questionnaire responses that came back. So for example, the hospital MOCA that was populated earlier. And with that, also the observations, again, the hospital MOCA that was done in scene 2. And lastly, the care plan information, again, for Betsy Smith-Johnson. So that ends scene 3.
Scene 4 introduces the pseudo-DEL, where Dave will demonstrate a bit more about the DEL.
Yeah, so basically just like in scene 2, where we had the hospital do the assessment and then the data get pushed through the data hub and converted from structured data capture to PACIO elements. The same thing is going to happen at the SNF. So we won't show the PAC assessment app again, but you can see, for example, here's the SNF pseudo EHR, and I see that this is the information that was entered in by the hospital. So there was a mobility assessment as well as a CAM assessment, and I can click on that and see the information from that assessment. So you can see here's the question, here's the response, the responses for that. So if I go back, I take the information like the assessment data from that would we be getting from the PAC assessment app, which is what I'm showing here. And if I send that to the SNF's EHR, then this will be, again, taking this information in structured data capture form, converting it to PACIO resources, and then sending that off to the data hub. And so at this point that the conversion is happening, it's done. And so now if I go back to the SNF pseudo EHR and I do an update, you'll see that there are now a couple of new functional assessments and a new cognitive assessment. And so the information has now gone back through the pseudo EHR and the SNF to the data hub for availability later on in the care journey. And with that, I'll hand it back to Nancy.
All right, so in scene 5, after 14 days, Betsy is discharged from the hospital back home. The home health agency coordinator reviews the patient's data from the data manager as part of their triage process. And Alex will be demonstrating the aspect from the home health agency.
So this is what the home health agency would see. They connect to a server with this transfer client or something similar, and then you see patient records. They click on a relevant patient, and they see essentially the same view that Dave just showed, but all of this has just been sent over, and so they can see the various functional status requests, all of the functional status questions and responses ordered by time. They can see all of the medications. They can see as well Betsy's care plan, giving all the information that is needed in terms of what goals she has and what the conditions are, including all of the various activities that she and her various providers have to do, and the supporting info like additional questionnaires, any contracts she might have signed, any risk assessments that they need to know about now that she's been discharged, like things like she's at risk to falls, she's depressive, allergic to shellfish, anything like that. And all of the information is there. And now I'm going to end it off again.
So as we've seen, Betsy has moved from facility to facility during this episode of care. She has multiple chronic conditions, and it's critical that each care provider has complete, accurate information at the point of care. But we also need to keep Betsy and her family engaged in her care and informed of her current status. At any point in her journey, Betsy can access the current copy of her clinical data. This helps Betsy engage in her care, provides any answers, details that she may have missed during her discharge meetings, and provides the opportunity to formulate any questions she may have. So here we see Betsy's ability to access her data. We'll start with her demographics section. And I'd like to point out that she has 2 adult children. One, her son Charles, is not only her son, but also her emergency contact and guardian. And she also has an adult daughter, Deborah, who, while she lives in a different part of the country, is just as interested in engaging in her mother's care and supporting her mother through her health journey. We also have contact numbers for each of these people. We also show the complete medication list for Betsy, as well as her list of conditions. We'll notice that Betsy has multiple chronic conditions, which makes her a little bit more challenging when she needs a little bit extra care. And you'll see us address this as we move forward. The next 3 points in her conditions are her assessed needs. This came out of the ELTSS plan, which we'll be talking about next. So I'm going to jump down to the ELTSS care plan. And this is the primary plan. You can see that she has the beginning date and the end date of this particular plan and a description of specifically what it's trying to cover. We know who the author is, Mark Planner, and his contact information, and also the funding source for this particular effort. We notice that Betsy has 2 strengths. She's able to manage her own bills, and she also can walk independently with a cane. As part of the planning process, Mark has asked her about her preferences, and she's actually very happy with her current service provider and would like to continue receiving services from this particular organization. The next section represents Betsy's personal goals. And in this case, she'd like to improve her balance skills, and she would really like to dance at her son's upcoming wedding. So the plan for each of these is she'll be performing more exercises to improve those skills, and she'll be working on her mobility to dance at her son's wedding. Additionally, this plan addresses the following needs. She needs transportation from time to time. She also needs some nutrition education to address her diabetes, and she needs some treatment for her depression. The next section describes some of the activities related to those particular needs. And for each of these, we have the description of the activity, both the start date and end date, the frequency that they're delivered, and if there's any cost related to it, all of that is detailed here. Additionally, we know who's responsible for providing each activity and their contact information. A couple things to point out in this first activity, this is represents a self-directed activity. So Betsy herself realized that sometimes she lacks balance in the tub. And so she realizes that she needs a railing installed, and she's actually gone out and engaged her son, Charles, who has agreed to install this on her behalf. In the next section, where we have this non-emergency transportation, there's a comment where the service provider will provide a reminder on the business day before the trip and will call when they're on their way. The next section is again part of the ELTSS plan and represents the fact that we need a signature for each of the roles of each of these people providing care and their contact information. Had this been actual data, there'd be an actual signature provided as well. We also have risk assessments associated with Betsy. So she is at risk for falls and also for depressive disorder. And again, we have the risk management plan associated with these risks. The last section represents a questionnaire, and it's part of the ELTSS plan to validate her involvement in the plan and support of the services that are being provided. I'm going to jump over now to the assessments. So for each of these, for most of these assessments, we can see that they're performed twice. So we're doing a functional status assessment, both on admission and discharge at the hospital. Again, admission and discharge at the SNF, and again, the admission and discharge at the Home Health Services Organization. If we drill down to any one of these assessments, you can see for the mobility assessment, there were 17 different questions. So we have the specific question and the answer at that point in time for each of these. And of course, we can drill down to any one of those. Additionally, we're providing a summary where you can see how each individual question was answered over time, and you can verify that and evaluate that at that granular level. In this particular case, we're also showing a trend, and we can see that our patient Betsy has actually improved over time on this particular question. This helps the person providing subsequent care to better understand where she was and how she has moved on through her treatment of care. This is the same sort of situation for each one of these. This is the self-care assessment. And again, we provide the summary of how she's done over time on that particular assessment. The same for the IADL, and again, the summary for each one of these. This is the independent living section. In her cognitive status, again, you have the drill down and also the summary information over time. And this is the same sort of information for the BIMS, PHQ-9, and MOCA. For each of these, we also have a top level score, and that's provided at this top level information. So that basically is a summary of the patient accessing her own data, but we also noted that Betsy has a son, Charles, who's involved in providing support to his mother. Both Betsy and Charles want to be updated on Betsy's current medical status. So the patient share system includes the ability for Betsy to easily share her medical record with users of her choice. Betsy has created electronic consent, which allows her son to have full access. So demonstrating that, this is a series of consents which Betsy has created for sharing her medical data. We'll edit one of these, and this is the case of her sharing her data with her son, Charles. She can choose to share all of her data as she's done here, or she could choose to share just a subset of that data. That's her option, but we'll continue to share all. There's also, it defaults to a term for her consent, but she can make this longer or shorter or adjust it as she wishes. She also can revoke that sharing at any point in time. Again, she's created consents for other people as well. In this case, she's given her daughter, Deborah, access to her data. And she also has another physician outside of this particular transitions of care use case that she'd like to share her clinical data with. And this gives her the ability to do that. So for any of the people that she shared data, and let's talk about her son, Charles, it will allow Charles to log in as himself and have secure access to Betsy's most current medical data at any point in time. So we'd also like to point out that the Patient Shared Data Hub that we demonstrated today includes a read-write FHIR API endpoint. At the start of our scenario, Betsy's current medical status is written to the Data Hub. As she transitions through each point of care, her most complete medical record can be reviewed by each care provider. At each point, our clinician can update her medical record to reflect any changes or additions. This demonstrates the patient record traveling with the patient, so that the most complete medical record is always available where the patient is receiving care. We should also notice that this track has demonstrated the FHIR API used in a read-write use case, enabling dynamic, seamless data exchange across care providers. This will enable better care for our patient with multiple chronic issues. At the same time, this will reduce provider burden in sharing data while engaging both the patient and their family in improving the patient's health. And I'll turn this back to Sima.
So what went well? We had over 60 participants attending our track. We were able to successfully collaborate with the ELTSS and the care coordination tracks. We demonstrated the use of multiple FHIR resources and FHIR IGs across the continuum of care and multiple facilities. Patient-Centric Solutions and MITRE's clients were able to retrieve PACIO and eLTSS data from the Altarum server on the first try with no prior integration work, demonstrating the interoperability of the eLTSS and PACIO IGs. Altarum's successful implementation using the PACIO-eLTSS server satisfies the requirement of a third implementation of the PACIO IGs for the September 2020 ballot. MITRE's and Patient-Centric Solutions successful development of eLTSS clients adds 2 more implementations of the eLTSS IG. Additionally, the clinical reasoning track successfully used PACIO data to execute electronic clinical quality measures, ECQM testing. They'd selected the CMS-149V9 Dementia Cognitive Assessment Measure, and they were able to successfully execute the quality measure against refined data to obtain a numerator and denominator result. During the Connectathon, we did experience some challenges. Challenges are good. It means that they've highlighted some issues that can be resolved. Many of these challenges that are outlined on these slides have been resolved. The pseudo-DEL did not always provide a LOINC code for some assessment answers as expected, but we realized that it was in fact a data conversion problem. Handling multifaceted assessment questions revealed a complicated use case, which we are already in the process of resolving. We also found that adding new on-the-fly data to the use case uncovered some issues with exchanging and displaying data. There were some system performance issues that surfaced during the demonstration, which has also been resolved. And we also found that there was a lack of real vendor systems, such as electronic health record systems, as active participants in the use case. Next steps for the PACIO project. We continue to discuss issues that were discovered during the Connectathon and since the Connectathon, and discuss possible solutions during our regularly scheduled PACIO meetings and with the technical team to decide on the best course of action. We want to investigate further collaboration opportunities for future Connectathons. We're preparing for the September 2020 balloting of the cognitive and functional status IGs, and we're also starting our planning for the September 2020 Connectathon. We intend to expand our use case to add more interoperability and more interaction. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.